My name is Ethan Carter, and on the morning of my wedding day, I woke up with memories of a life that had already ended. For a few seconds, I couldn't understand what was happening. The ceiling above me was familiar. The room around me was familiar. The sound of my phone ringing on the table was familiar, but something was wrong. I sat up slowly, my heart racing. The last thing I remembered was pain. Years of it. A marriage filled with disappointment. A love I fought to protect alone. A future where I gave everything to someone who never truly chose me. And then, nothing. But now I was back. Years earlier. On the exact morning I was supposed to marry Sophia Miller. The woman I once believed was my forever. In my previous life, I thought Sophia and I had the perfect love story. We met young. We supported each other. When she struggled, I stood beside her. When she had dreams, I helped her chase them. I believed that was what love meant, giving everything without hesitation. So when she agreed to marry me, I thought I had won the greatest happiness in the world. I was wrong, because there was always someone else in her heart. Ryan Blake, her first love, the person she never truly let go of. I didn't know at the beginning. I ignored the small signs, the moments when she seemed distant, the times she compared my choices to his. The way her eyes changed whenever his name appeared. I convinced myself that love required patience, that if I tried harder, she would eventually choose me completely. So I sacrificed my career, my dreams, my pride, everything. I became the person who carried the weight of our marriage, while Sophia secretly held onto a past she refused to release. Years later, when Ryan returned, everything I feared became reality. Sophia's heart had never completely belonged to me. I watched the woman I loved walk away toward the person she had always remembered. And I was left wondering why I had spent so many years fighting for someone who had already chosen someone else. The greatest pain was not losing her. It was realizing I had lost myself trying to keep her. That regret followed me until the end. But now, I had another chance. I looked at the wedding suit hanging nearby. In my old life, I would have rushed to the ceremony. I would have smiled. I would have promised forever. I would have ignored every warning sign because I wanted the dream more than I wanted the truth. Not this time. This time, I would not beg someone to love me. I would not compete with a memory. I would not become a second choice. My phone rang again. A message from Sophia. Are you ready? Today is finally here. I stared at those words. Once, they would have filled me with happiness. Now, they only reminded me of everything I had lost. I placed the phone down. Today was not the beginning of my marriage. It was the beginning of my second life. And this time, I would choose myself. When I arrived at the wedding venue, everything looked exactly the same. The decorations, the guests, the flowers Sophia had carefully chosen. Every detail was a reminder of a future I already knew. In my previous life, I had walked into this place full of hope. Today, I walked in with clarity. I saw Sophia standing near the entrance. She looked beautiful. For a moment, I remembered the woman I had loved so deeply. The woman I had protected. The woman I had once believed would choose me above everyone else. But memories were different from reality. And I knew the truth now. Before I could approach her, the atmosphere suddenly changed. People began whispering. I followed their eyes. Ryan Blake had arrived. The person who had haunted my marriage before it even began. In my previous life, I would have felt threatened. I would have tried to prove I was better. I would have fought for Sophia. Not anymore. I simply watched. Ryan and Sophia looked at each other. That one moment told me everything. The hesitation, the emotion, the feelings they were trying to hide. They didn't need words. Their expressions revealed what I had spent years refusing to accept. Sophia still loved Ryan, and Ryan still held a place in her heart. A strange calm settled over me. Not anger, not jealousy, just acceptance. The old Ethan would have been devastated. The old Ethan would have begged. The old Ethan would have asked Sophia to choose him. But I was no longer that man. I quietly stepped away. For the first time, I chose my own dignity over a love that was never completely mine. Later, when Sophia tried to explain, I stopped her gently. You don't have to pretend. She looked surprised. What do you mean? I looked at Ryan, then back at her. I think both of you already know what you want." Her face changed. "Ethan," I shook my head. "It's okay." And surprisingly, it was, because losing Sophia no longer felt like losing everything. It felt like being released from a future that would have destroyed me. As I left the wedding venue, I thought about the second chance I had been given. I could return to the same path, or I could choose differently. And then I remembered someone else. Claire Morgan, Sophia's boss. A woman many people described as powerful, successful, and impossible to approach. In my previous life, Claire had been one of the few people who saw me clearly. She never judged me by my failures. She saw my loyalty, my ability, my determination. While everyone else only noticed what I lacked, Claire noticed what I carried. Back then, I never imagined someone like her would value someone like me. But now I understood something. The person who truly saw my worth was not the person I spent my life chasing. It was the person I overlooked. I took out my phone. My fingers hovered over Claire's contact. This decision would surprise everyone. Maybe they would call it impossible. Maybe they would think I was acting out of revenge. But they would be wrong. I wasn't choosing Claire because I wanted to hurt Sophia. I was choosing Claire because, for the first time, I wanted a future built on respect. A future where I was loved as an equal. I pressed call. When Claire answered, her calm voice came through. "Ethan," I took a deep breath. "Claire, I need to ask you something." There was a pause. "What is it?" I looked back at the wedding venue one last time. The place where my first life began to fall apart. Then I turned away. "Would you consider marrying me?" Silence filled the line. But for the first time in my life, I was not choosing someone who needed to be convinced to love me. I was choosing a future where I was already valued. The day after I left the wedding venue, my life changed completely. Everyone expected me to be heartbroken. They expected me to chase after Sophia. They expected me to regret walking away from the woman I had spent years loving. But for the first time, I was not making decisions based on what others expected. I was making them based on what I knew. And I knew one thing clearly. I would never return to the life that had already destroyed me once. When I met Claire Morgan, I expected her to reject my request. After all, my question had been unexpected. A man who had just walked away from his wedding asking the most successful woman he knew to marry him. It sounded unreasonable, but Claire was not like everyone else. She listened. She thought carefully, and then she surprised me. "Why me?" That was the first question she asked. I looked at her. "Because you're the only person who ever saw me for who I really was." Claire's expression changed slightly. She was used to people approaching her because of her success, her company, her influence, not because they valued her as a person. "You understand this is not a simple decision," she said. "I know. Marriage is not something to use as an escape." "I know that too." She studied me quietly. Then she asked the question I knew mattered most. "Are you choosing me because you lost Sophia?" I could have given an easy answer. I could have denied it immediately. But I wanted to be honest. No, I am choosing you because I finally understand the difference between loving someone and being valued by someone. Claire remained silent. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. A small smile. The kind most people never saw. "You're different." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "You used to doubt yourself. You used to let other people decide your worth." She paused. "But now you sound like someone who finally understands it." She was right. I had changed. Not because I became a different person. Because I finally stopped ignoring the lessons my first life had taught me. Claire eventually agreed. Not because she needed a husband. Not because she wanted to prove anything. Because she believed we could build something real. Our marriage happened quietly. There were no grand announcements. No dramatic celebrations. Just two people making a choice. A choice based on trust. When news spread that I had married Claire Morgan, everyone was shocked. Especially Sophia. She contacted me several times. At first, her messages were confused. "Ethan, what happened? Why did you make such a big decision so quickly?" I read the messages but didn't respond immediately. Because I knew what she expected. She expected the old Ethan. The man who would always wait. The man who would always forgive. The man who would always come back. But that man no longer existed. Meanwhile, Sophia and Ryan struggled to understand what had happened. They believed I would eventually regret leaving. They believed my marriage to Claire was an emotional decision. They were wrong. Because for the first time, I was not running away from something. I was walking towards something better, and why marriage with Claire was different from what I had known before. There were no empty promises, no pretending, no need to constantly prove my worth. From the beginning, Claire treated me as an equal, not as someone who needed saving, not as someone who needed to follow behind her. As her partner, that alone felt unfamiliar. In my previous life, I had spent years trying to convince someone to see my value. With Claire, I never had to ask. She already saw it. One evening, we sat together reviewing plans for our future. Not company plans, not business strategies. Our plans. I know this situation happened quickly, Claire said. I smiled slightly. You mean because I proposed after leaving my wedding? She gave me a rare, amused look. That part is still difficult to explain. I laughed, but then her expression became serious. Ethan, I want you to know something. What? If you ever feel like you owe me something because I agreed to marry you, don't. I looked at her. Why would I think that? Because I know how you are. She smiled softly. You always feel responsible for everyone around you. She was right. That had always been my weakness. I gave too much. I carried too much. And I forgot that I deserve care too. I don't want a marriage where one person sacrifices everything, Claire continued. I want us to stand beside each other. Those words meant more than she knew, because they were exactly what I had wanted all along. A partnership, not a battle, not a competition. Meanwhile, Noah Bennett noticed the difference in me almost immediately. He had been my closest friend since childhood. He knew the old Ethan better than anyone. When we met for coffee, he studied me for several minutes. Something changed. I looked at him. What? You? I laughed. That's vague. No, I'm serious. He leaned forward. You used to look like you were constantly waiting for someone to choose you. His words surprised me, because they were true. And now you look like you finally chose yourself. I smiled. Maybe that was exactly what happened. Back at Sophia's side, things were changing too. At first, she believed I would return. She thought our history meant I could never truly walk away. But days became weeks, and I didn't come back. For the first time, she began questioning everything. She remembered the moments I supported her, the times I stood beside her, the sacrifices I made without asking for anything. She had always assumed my love would remain. She never imagined a day when I would stop waiting. One evening, Sophia looked at an old photo of us together, a photo from before everything became complicated. She wondered why she had never noticed what she had, why she only understood my importance after I was gone. Because sometimes people don't realize the value of something while it is in their hands. They only understand after they let it slip away. But I was no longer looking backward. I had spent one lifetime regretting my choices. I would not spend my second chance doing the same. Claire and I were not building a perfect marriage. We were building a real one. A marriage where both people mattered. A marriage where love was not something one person begged for. It was something two people chose. And for the first time in my life, I believed I had finally chosen the right future. For the first time in my life, I stopped waiting for someone else to choose me. And that changed everything. While Claire and I built our new life together, Sophia and Ryan began discovering a truth they never expected. Love based only on memories could not survive reality. At the beginning, Sophia believed she had made the right choice. She thought Ryan was the person she had always wanted. The person from her past. The person she had never forgotten. But after the excitement disappeared, everyday life began revealing what feelings alone could not hide. Ryan was charming. He knew how to make Sophia smile. He knew how to remind her of their younger years. But he struggled when real responsibilities appeared, when problems needed solutions, when sacrifices needed to be made. That was when Sophia started noticing the difference. In the past, when she faced difficulties, I was always there. I handled problems quietly. I supported her dreams. I carried responsibilities without making her feel pressured. She had mistaken that stability for something ordinary. Now, without me, she began understanding what she had lost. Meanwhile, my life with Claire continued changing. Our marriage was not perfect. We still had different personalities. Claire was organized and careful. I was more relaxed and patient. But instead of allowing those differences to separate us, we learned from each other. For the first time, I experienced a relationship where my feelings mattered equally. Claire asked for my opinions. She listened to my concerns. She trusted my judgment. It was something I never realized I had been missing. One afternoon, Claire's assistant, Emily Reed, noticed the difference immediately. She had worked with Claire for years. She knew the old Claire, the woman who rarely showed emotion, the woman who focused on business before everything else. But now, Emily noticed small changes. Claire smiled more. She talked about home. She occasionally checked her phone and looked happier after seeing a message from me. "You've changed," Emily said one day. Claire looked up from her documents. "Have I?" Emily smiled. "Yes. Before, you only looked like someone building an empire. Now you look like someone who has a reason to come home." Claire didn't answer, but she smiled, because she knew it was true. However, peace never lasted forever. A new challenge appeared when Victor Hayes, one of Claire's biggest business rivals, began targeting Morgan Holdings. Victor was known for aggressive strategies. He looked for weaknesses and attacked before competitors could react. At first, Claire's team believed they could handle him. But I remembered something, a situation from my previous life, a mistake that had nearly damaged Morgan Holdings years earlier, a decision that looked harmless but created serious consequences later. This time, I knew what was coming, and I refused to watch Claire face it alone. When I noticed unusual activity in the market, I approached her. "Claire, I think Victor is planning something." She looked surprised. "Based on what?" I explained my concerns. At first, she listened carefully. Then she asked a question. "Ethan, how did you notice this?" I paused, because I couldn't explain the truth. I couldn't tell her I had lived this moment before. So I simply said, "Because I've learned to pay attention." Claire studied me. Then she smiled. "I believe you." Those 3 words meant more than she knew. Because in my previous life, I had spent years trying to prove my worth. Now, the person beside me trusted me without hesitation. And soon, Claire would discover exactly how much I could help her. Victor Hayes moved faster than most people expected. Within days, he began putting pressure on Morgan Holdings. He spread doubts among investors. He questioned Claire's business decisions. He tried to create uncertainty about the company's future. But this time, Claire was prepared. Because this time, she wasn't facing the challenge alone. Using the knowledge I carried from my previous life, I helped Claire identify the weak points in Victor's strategy. I remembered which partnerships he would target, which rumors he would spread, which decisions would later become problems. Together, we created a plan before he could complete his attack. When Victor finally made his move, he expected Morgan Holdings to panic. Instead, Claire was ready. The investors who had expected chaos saw something completely different. They saw a CEO who had predicted every step. They saw a company that had already prepared. Victor's confidence disappeared when his plan failed. After the meeting ended, Claire and I stood together in her office. "You knew exactly what he would do." I looked at her. I had a feeling. She smiled. "You always say things like that." "What do you mean?" "You act like you are just helping." She stepped closer. "But you don't realize how valuable you are." Her words surprised me, because they were the same kind of words I had needed to hear years earlier. Claire continued, "I spent my entire career believing I had to protect everyone around me. But I never thought someone would stand beside me." I smiled. "You don't have to do everything alone anymore." For a moment, Claire was quiet. Then she nodded. "I know." Meanwhile, Sophia finally came to find me. I knew it would happen eventually. The moment she saw that I had truly moved on, she arrived at my office looking uncertain. "Ethan." I turned around. "Sophia." She looked uncomfortable. "I wanted to talk." I nodded. "About what?" She hesitated. "About us." Those words brought back memories. Not the happy ones. The painful ones. The years I spent trying to save a marriage that was already broken. The nights I wondered why I was never enough. The moment I realized I had been fighting alone. But I was no longer that person. "What about us?" Sophia looked down. "I think I made a mistake." I stayed silent. I was confused. I thought I knew what I wanted. She stepped closer. But I realized now. I interrupted gently. "Sophia." She stopped. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me." Her eyes softened. But that doesn't change what happened. She looked at me. I loved you. I know, but I can't go back. The words were difficult, but they were necessary, because returning to Sophia would mean betraying myself. I spent one lifetime waiting for you to choose me. I won't spend this one hoping you change your mind. Victor Hayes moved faster than most people expected. Within days, he began putting pressure on Morgan Holdings. He spread doubts among investors. He questioned Claire's business decisions. He tried to create uncertainty about the company's future. But this time, Claire was prepared. Because this time, she wasn't facing the challenge alone. Using the knowledge I carried from my previous life, I helped Claire identify the weak points in Victor's strategy. I remembered which partnerships he would target, which rumors he would spread, which decisions would later become problems. Together, we created a plan before he could complete his attack. When Victor finally made his move, he expected Morgan Holdings to panic. Instead, Claire was ready. The investors who had expected chaos saw something completely different. They saw a CEO who had predicted every step. They saw a company that had already prepared. Victor's confidence disappeared when his plan failed. After the meeting ended, Claire and I stood together in her office. You knew exactly what he would do. I looked at her. I had a feeling. She smiled. You always say things like that. What do you mean? You act like you were just helping. She stepped closer. But you don't realize how valuable you are. Her words surprised me, because they were the same kind of words I had needed to hear years earlier. Claire continued. I spent my entire career believing I had to protect everyone around me. But I never thought someone would stand beside me. I smiled. You don't have to do everything alone anymore. For a moment, Claire was quiet. Then she nodded. I know. Meanwhile, Sophia finally came to find me. I knew it would happen eventually. The moment she saw that I had truly moved on, she arrived at my office looking uncertain. Ethan. I turned around. Sophia. She looked uncomfortable. I wanted to talk. I nodded. About what? She hesitated. About us. Those words brought back memories. Not the happy ones. The painful ones. The years I spent trying to save a marriage that was already broken. The nights I wondered why I was never enough. The moment I realized I had been fighting alone. But I was no longer that person. What about us? Sophia looked down. I think I made a mistake. I stayed silent. I was confused. I thought I knew what I wanted. She stepped closer. But I realized now. I interrupted gently. Sophia. She stopped. I know you didn't mean to hurt me. Her eyes softened. But that doesn't change what happened. She looked at me. I loved you. I know, but I can't go back. The words were difficult, but they were necessary, because returning to Sophia would mean betraying myself. I spent one lifetime waiting for you to choose me. I won't spend this one hoping you change your mind. Sophia looked hurt, maybe because she finally understood. The Ethan who always waited was gone. She left quietly, and for the first time, I felt no anger, only peace. When I returned home, Claire noticed immediately that something had happened. Are you okay? I smiled. Yes. She looked at me carefully. Then she reached for my hand. Good. That simple gesture reminded me of everything I'd gained. I had lost a love that was never complete, but I had found a partnership built on respect. Claire did not need me because she was weak. I did not need her because I was broken. We chose each other because together we were stronger. For the first time in 2 lives, I knew I was exactly where I belonged. I thought my past had finally lost its power over me. For the first time, I was focused on the future. My marriage with Claire. Our life together. The company we were protecting. But I learned something important. The past does not always disappear. Sometimes, it waits for the right moment to return. Victor Hayes chose that moment carefully. After his first failure against Morgan Holdings, he became more desperate. He had lost investors. He had lost influence. And instead of accepting defeat, he searched for another way to attack Claire. This time, he didn't target the company. He targeted me. One morning, news articles appeared everywhere. The headlines were designed to create suspicion. They questioned my relationship with Claire. They questioned my past with Sophia. They suggested that I had left one woman for another because of power and status. At first, I wasn't surprised. Victor had always been the kind of person who attacked where people were most vulnerable. But then I saw Sophia's name. She had given an interview. In it, She claimed our relationship ended because of misunderstandings. She suggested that Claire had entered my life before everything between us was truly finished. Reading those words brought back memories. Not because I still loved Sophia. That feeling was gone. But because I remembered the pain of my previous life. The life where I blamed myself for everything. The life where I kept asking what I'd done wrong. Claire found me reading the article. She didn't ask if it was true. She didn't question my choices. She simply sat beside me. Ethan. I looked at her. I know this is difficult. I shook my head. I'm okay. When someone chooses another path, you cannot force them to return. You can only choose what you do next. And I chose to move forward. The reporters listened carefully. For the first time, the story was not about rumors. It was about reality. I didn't reveal every painful detail. I didn't need to. The truth did not require revenge. It only required honesty. After the press conference, the public reaction began changing. People who had judged me started questioning Victor's intentions. They realized he had tried to create a personal scandal because he could not defeat Claire professionally. The board of Morgan Holdings also recognized what had happened. Instead of damaging the company, Victor's attack revealed something unexpected. Claire and I were stronger together. We reviewed every strategy, every decision, every challenge, and we overcame them as partners. One evening, after everything settled, Claire and I stood in her office overlooking the city. You never told me everything you went through. I looked at her. I didn't want my past to become your burden. Claire shook her head. That's not how partners work. She stepped closer. When I married you, I didn't choose only the happy parts. I chose all of you. Her words touched something deep inside me. Because in my previous life, I had always been the person carrying the weight. Now, someone was willing to carry it with me. I spent so much time thinking I wasn't enough, I admitted. Claire held my hand. You were always enough. You just spent too long with someone who couldn't see it. Meanwhile, Sophia watched everything from a distance. She saw the respect Claire and I had for each other. She saw the confidence I carried, the person I had become. And finally, she understood. She had not lost someone who was waiting for her. She had lost someone who had already moved beyond her reach. The man who once begged for her love no longer existed. That man had been replaced by someone who knew his worth. Someone who had found a partner who believed in him. Someone who finally understood that love should not require losing yourself. The past had tried to destroy my future. But instead, it showed me exactly how valuable my future truly was. Months passed after the battle with Victor Hayes. Morgan Holdings continued growing. The rumors faded. The public moved on to other stories. But some consequences could not be avoided, especially for Sophia. At first, she believed losing me was temporary. She believed that once things became difficult with Ryan, she could return to the person who had always been there. She believed the door would always remain open. But time changed everything. Ryan was not the person she remembered. The man from her memories had been a symbol of her past, a reminder of a simpler time. But reality was different. When challenges appeared, Ryan struggled. The confidence that once attracted Sophia slowly disappeared. The promises he had made became harder to believe. And eventually, the relationship that Sophia had chosen over everything else began falling apart. Ryan left after his reputation suffered and the opportunities he depended on disappeared. For the first time, Sophia was truly alone. And in that silence, she began remembering things she had ignored. Not the dramatic moments, not the promises, the small things. The way I always noticed when she was tired. The way I supported her dreams without asking for anything. The way I stood beside her even when I was hurting. She finally understood something painful. She had spent years searching for a feeling from the past while ignoring the person who had built a future with her. One evening, Sophia came to see me. When I opened the door, I was surprised. I hadn't expected her. She looked different, not because she had changed physically, because the confidence she once carried was gone. Ethan, I nodded. Sophia. There was a long silence. Then she spoke. I wanted to apologize. I stepped aside and let her enter. She sat down quietly. I spent so much time thinking I knew what love was. She looked at her hands. I thought because Ryan was my first love, he was the person I was supposed to be with. I listened. But I was wrong. Her voice became softer. I confused memories with love. I confused excitement with something real. She looked at me, and I didn't realize the person who truly loved me was right beside me the entire time. Hearing those words would have destroyed the old Ethan, the man who spent years hoping Sophia would finally understand. But that man was gone. I felt sadness, not anger, because I knew she was finally seeing the truth. Just too late. Ethan, she paused. Do you ever think about what could have happened if I chose you? I looked at her. There was a time when that question would have been everything I wanted to hear. But now, it was only a reminder of a road I had already left behind. Sophia, I used to think about that every day. Her eyes filled with emotion. But I don't anymore. The room became quiet, because I learned something important. Some choices change things permanently. She looked down, and I knew she understood. I was no longer waiting for her regret. I had already found my future. Sophia remained silent for a long time. I could see the regret in her eyes. The kind of regret that came from finally understanding something after it was already gone. I know I don't deserve another chance, she said quietly. I didn't answer immediately, because she was right. Not because I wanted to punish her. Not because I hated her, but because some things could not simply return to the way they were. I don't think you are a bad person, Sophia. She looked surprised, but I also can't pretend nothing happened. She lowered her gaze. I know, I continued. My second chance wasn't given to me, so I could repeat the same pain. Those words carried the weight of an entire lifetime. A lifetime of trying. A lifetime of waiting. A lifetime of forgetting myself. I spent too long believing my happiness depended on someone else choosing me. I looked toward the window, but I was wrong. My happiness was something I had to choose for myself. Sophia wiped away her tears. Is it because of Claire? I smiled slightly. Claire is part of my happiness. But she isn't the reason I moved on. The reason I moved on is because I finally learned my own value. That was the truth. Claire had not saved me. She had simply been the person who showed me that I was worth saving. When Sophia left that night, I felt something I never expected. A person should not have to lose themselves trying to earn someone else's love. The right person does not make you feel like a replacement. They make you feel like a choice. Months later, Claire and I continued building our future. Our marriage became stronger. Not because we never faced problems, because we faced them together. We talked openly. We respected each other's opinions. We supported each other's dreams. The relationship I once thought was impossible became my reality. One evening, Claire and I stood together on the balcony of our home. The city lights stretched before us. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you never got that second chance? She asked. I thought about it. The old pain. The old regrets. The life I almost repeated. Then I smiled. No. Why? Because if I never experienced losing everything, I might never have learned what truly mattered. Claire rested her head against my shoulder. And what matters? I looked at her. This. Us. The life we chose. The future I once feared losing had become the future I never knew I deserved. Sophia's regret came too late. But my happiness arrived exactly when I needed it. Because sometimes a second chance is not about fixing the past. Sometimes it is about finally choosing the future that was waiting for you all along. 1 year later, my life looked nothing like the one I remembered. And that was the greatest blessing. A year ago, I woke up on my wedding day believing I had been given another chance to fix my mistakes. I thought my second life was about changing the outcome, about avoiding pain, about proving that the people who hurt me were wrong. But I eventually understood something much deeper. My second chance was never about revenge. It was about learning who I truly was and choosing the life I deserved. Today, I stood beside Claire Morgan at the center of a business world that once believed I did not belong. The same people who had once questioned my place beside her now respected us as one of the strongest partnerships in the industry. Morgan Holdings had grown more successful than ever. But the company's greatest achievement was not its profits. It was the culture Claire built. A company where loyalty mattered, where people were valued, where decisions were made with honesty instead of pride. And everyone knew that behind Claire's success was a partner who stood beside her. Not beneath her, not behind her, beside her. That was the difference. Our marriage had become something people admired. Not because we were perfect, but because we were real. We disagreed sometimes. We faced pressure. We had difficult conversations. But we never stopped choosing each other. That was something I had never experienced before. A relationship where love was not a sacrifice made by one person. It was an effort shared by two. During the anniversary celebration of Morgan Holdings, I looked around the room and remembered the wedding day from my previous life. The same kind of celebration. The same feeling of standing before a crowd. But the emotions were completely different. Back then, I stood at an altar preparing to give my entire heart to someone who would eventually let it break. Now, I stood beside someone who protected it. Claire noticed me becoming quiet. "What are you thinking about?" I smiled, just remembering how different everything is now. She looked at me. "Do you ever miss your old life?" I thought carefully. There was a time when that question would have been difficult. A time when I would have wished to change everything. But now I understood. The painful moments had shaped me. They had taught me lessons I could not have learned any other way. "No," I said. "I don't miss it." Claire smiled. "Why?" "Because if I had never lost that life, I might never have found this one." Her expression softened, and I knew she understood. Meanwhile, Sophia had accepted the consequences of her choices. She no longer tried to return. No more messages. No more attempts to rewrite the past. She finally understood that regret could not reverse time. She had chosen the road she wanted, and now she had to walk it. Ryan disappeared completely from our lives. The person Sophia once believed was her destiny became only a memory. But I no longer cared about what happened to them, because my focus was no longer on what I lost. It was on everything I gained. After the anniversary celebration ended, Claire and I stayed behind for a while. The building was quiet. The lights from the city filled the windows. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. Claire stood beside me, looking over the place she had worked so hard to build. "You know," she said softly, "a year ago, I never imagined my life would become like this." I looked at her. "Do you regret it?" She turned toward me with a smile. "Never." That answer meant everything. Because Claire had never chosen me because she needed someone. She chose me because she wanted someone. There was a difference. In my previous life, I spent years trying to become the person Sophia would finally choose. I changed myself. I sacrificed my dreams. I accepted being second. But no matter how much I gave, I could never force someone to love me the way I needed. The painful truth was simple. You cannot build a future with someone who is always looking at another past. But Claire was different. She didn't ask me to compete. She didn't ask me to prove I was worthy. She saw my worth before I even saw it myself. That was the kind of love I had always searched for. Not perfect, not without challenges, but honest. As we left the company building, Claire reached for my hand. A small gesture, something ordinary. But to me, it represented everything. Because once, I believed holding on to someone else was the only way to avoid losing happiness. Now I knew happiness was never something another person could give me. It was something I had to choose. The next morning, Claire and I watched the sun rise together from our home. The sky slowly brightened. The world became quiet. She leaned against me. "Are you thinking about the past again?" I smiled, only for a moment. "What about the wedding day?" She looked at me. "The day you almost lost everything." I shook my head. "No, the day I finally found myself." Claire smiled. I realized something then. The man who woke up on that wedding morning was desperate to change his future. He wanted to escape pain. He wanted to avoid betrayal. But the man standing here now understood something different. The greatest victory was not proving Sophia wrong. It was not watching Ryan fail. It was not showing the world that I had succeeded. The greatest victory was becoming someone who no longer needed revenge. Someone who no longer needed approval. Someone who knew he deserved love. My rebirth gave me another chance. But the choice was always mine. I could have returned to the same mistakes. I could have chased the same person. I could have spent my second life trying to fix a broken past. Instead, I chose something better. I chose myself. And then I chose Claire, the woman who chose me first. As the sunlight touched the horizon, Claire held my hand. I looked at the future ahead of us. And for the first time, I had no regrets. The life I lost was never the life I was meant to keep. The life I built was the one I was always meant to have.